It's the early hours of February 28, 2005, on the Ards Peninsula in County Down. A caravan park sits on the edge of the Irish Sea, out of season, quiet, and almost completely empty. There are no streetlights, no passing traffic, and no witnesses. Just darkness, wind off the coastline, and a single occupied caravan. Inside that caravan is 25-year-old Lisa Dorrian. Within hours, she will disappear without a trace. No body is ever found. No forensic evidence confirms a crime scene. And yet police are certain of one thing. Lisa Dorrian was murdered. Before the questions, before the investigation, it's important to understand who Lisa Dorrian was. She was 25 years old, from County Down, described by her family as warm, independent, and full of energy. She worked as a shop assistant and had spent several years in a long-term relationship before beginning a new chapter in her life. Like many people her age, she was navigating change. New friendships, new experiences, and new plans for the future. She had ambitions beyond Northern Ireland and was preparing to move to Spain, where she hoped to start a jet ski rental business using compensation money she was due to receive. This wasn't someone at a standstill in life. This was someone moving forward, making plans, and looking ahead. Her family remember her not as a headline or a mystery, but as a daughter, a sister, and a constant presence in their lives. And that matters, because over time, it's easy for the person at the center of a case like this to be overshadowed by the investigation. But Lisa Dorrian was not a case. She was a person, and her absence has been felt every single day since. In recent developments, police released previously unseen CCTV footage of Lisa in the hours before she disappeared. The footage shows her alive, moving normally, visiting locations along the Ards Peninsula. There is nothing in her behavior to suggest distress or danger. She appears relaxed, present, and unaware of what is about to unfold. These images are significant because they anchor the timeline in reality. They show us Lisa as she was in those final hours, not as a mystery, but as a person going about her life. They also confirm that whatever happened to her did not begin in isolation. It happened after this point, within a known environment, and within a known group of people. Lisa's movements in the final 48 hours of her life are unusually well mapped. On Friday night, she socialized in Groomsport. On Saturday, she spent time between Ballywalter and Kirkcudbright. By Sunday, she briefly returned to her flat before heading back out again. This pattern is important because it tells us she was not isolated, not being followed, and not acting out of character. She was moving freely within a familiar social circle. However, by this stage, her environment had shifted. She had begun associating with a new group of acquaintances, and there were reports of drug use and links to individuals involved in local criminal activity. This context does not explain what happened, but it provides a backdrop that may help explain why it happened. Later that Sunday evening, Lisa arrives at an after-party inside a caravan at Ballyhalbert. Around a dozen people are present. As the night progresses, people begin to leave. One by one, the group disperses until only two individuals remain: Lisa Dorrian and 17-year-old Mark Lovett. This moment is critical, because from here onwards, the case becomes contained. It is no longer about a wide group of attendees, but about a single environment and the final confirmed interaction within it. In investigative terms, this is known as a contained last-seen event. In cases like this, the final location and the people present at that location become central to understanding what happened next. To understand what likely happened, it's necessary to slow the timeline down and examine the environment itself. A caravan is a confined space, limited exits, limited movement, and very little separation between individuals. There is no distance, no ability to disengage easily, and no external visibility. Any confrontation inside that space becomes immediate and unavoidable. If voices are raised, if tension escalates, there are very few ways for it to de-escalate naturally. That matters, because it shapes the type of event that could occur inside that environment. The critical window identified by investigators lies between approximately 10:30 p.m. and 1:15 a.m. During this time, a witness contacted Lovett and described him as incoherent, disoriented, and possibly under the influence of drugs. This is the last known interaction before Lisa disappears completely from the timeline. Lovett later told police that at around 4:45 a.m., he and Lisa saw flashing lights and heard loud noises outside the caravan. He claimed they ran into the darkness and became separated, and that he never saw her again. However, this account raises immediate questions. Other caravan owners in the vicinity reported no flashing lights and no unusual noises, despite the quiet and isolated nature of the site. In an environment like this, such disturbances would likely have been noticed. Additionally, at around 5 a.m., Lovett made a phone call to Lisa's former boyfriend. According to that individual, Lovett did not sound distressed or panicked. This is not consistent with someone who has just lost sight of a person in darkness under alarming circumstances. There is also the issue of cognitive state. If Lovett was as disoriented and incoherent as described earlier in the night, then the ability to accurately recall events hours later becomes questionable. Memory under the influence of drugs can be fragmented, distorted, or incomplete. This creates a situation where an account may contain elements of truth, but not reflect events as they actually occurred. This is not uncommon in cases where substance use is a factor. When investigators assess accounts like this, they look for consistency, corroboration, and alignment with known facts. In this case, the account provided does not align cleanly with the environment, the timeline, or independent observations. That does not prove what happened, but it does indicate that the explanation provided may not fully reflect reality. Detectives now believe that Lisa was most likely killed inside the caravan. The absence of visible forensic evidence does not contradict this. Certain forms of violence, such as strangulation or suffocation, can leave minimal trace, particularly in confined spaces, and especially if both individuals were under the influence of substances. In such conditions, a fatal outcome can occur quickly and without obvious signs. There may be no blood, no signs of struggle visible after the fact, and no immediate indication that a serious incident has occurred. If that is what happened, then the focus of the investigation shifts. This is no longer about where Lisa went, but how she was removed from that caravan. Because once death occurs in a confined environment like that, the next decision becomes critical. Report it or conceal it. And that decision determines everything that follows. The disposal phase introduces new requirements: time, transport, privacy, and composure. The location itself imposes constraints. The caravan park is open, coastal, and exposed. This means any removal would need to happen quickly, under cover of darkness, and with minimal risk of detection. There is a limited window between the event occurring and daylight, and within that window, decisions must be made under pressure. Investigators believe that assistance may have been sought after the event, likely from someone with a close personal relationship to the offender. This is based on the enduring silence surrounding the case. In situations where multiple people are involved, information often emerges over time unless there is a strong bond preventing disclosure. The fact that no one has come forward in over 2 decades suggests that any assistance provided came from someone deeply connected to the individual responsible. When the geography of the Ards Peninsula is considered alongside the available time window, movement becomes restricted. From the caravan park, there are only a limited number of viable routes, inland, towards areas such as the RAF Ballyhalbert site and the clay pits, along the coastline, where access to the sea is possible, or further inland, requiring longer travel and increased risk. When time pressure is factored in, along with the likelihood of panic rather than planning, the most probable scenario is immediate local concealment. This is supported by investigative analysis, which suggests that the disposal was carried out quickly and with minimal preparation. That type of behavior is consistent with an unplanned event followed by reactive decision-making. It is not consistent with a complex, premeditated disposal involving long-distance transport. Handling a body is not simple. It requires physical effort, coordination, and time. In a situation where an individual is under stress, possibly under the influence, and aware of the risk of being discovered, the most likely course of action is the simplest one available. That means moving the body the shortest possible distance to a location where it can be concealed. Despite extensive searches over land, sea, and air, no trace of Lisa has ever been found. Areas have been excavated, water bodies searched, and locations re-examined over the years. Each search has been driven by new information or analysis, but none have resulted in a discovery. This absence of evidence is not proof that she is not there. It is an indication of how effectively she was concealed. Over the years, multiple arrests have been made, and numerous individuals have been questioned. However, no charges have ever been brought. This is not due to a lack of investigative effort, but rather a lack of evidence that meets the threshold required for prosecution. Without a body, without forensic confirmation, and without cooperation from those involved, the case remains unresolved. This is where the phrase "wall of silence" becomes central. Witnesses have not come forward, information has not been shared, and over time, that silence has become one of the defining features of this case. Whether driven by fear, loyalty, or self-preservation, it has prevented the investigation from progressing in the way it otherwise might have. Cases like this do not remain unsolved because they are impossible to understand. They remain unsolved because the final piece of evidence, the piece that connects understanding to proof, is missing. And that piece of evidence often exists in the knowledge held by individuals who were present at the time. What remains is a structure, a defined sequence of events, a clear location, and a limited number of individuals who were present at the critical moment. This is not a case built on endless possibilities. It is a case built on a small number of highly probable scenarios. Lisa Dorrian was 25 years old. She had plans, ambitions, and a future that extended far beyond that night. The CCTV footage released years later reminds us of who she was in those final hours. Not a mystery, not a theory, but a person, alive and present. Her family have spent more than 2 decades waiting for answers, holding on to the hope that one day the truth will emerge. This was not a disappearance in the traditional sense. It was an event. It happened in a specific place, at a specific time, involving specific people. The challenge has never been understanding the structure of what occurred. The challenge has been breaking through the silence that surrounds it. Because someone knows what happened inside that caravan. Someone knows what happened in the hours that followed. And after more than 20 years, the truth has not vanished. It has simply been withheld. And one day, that silence will break.